Fuzzing a page with ZAP starts with intercepting the page itself. In this example, we're going to just pick a random page inside of Matilde. So we'll pick one of the SQL injection pages, for example. The user lookup page has a name and a password field. And first we want to intercept that request. So in this case, we're already proxying the entire site through ZAP. So we have proxy set to proxy everything through ZAP, or you could manually set the Firefox proxy using the preferences and then searching for proxy. In any case, you'll see that we're proxying this local website to ZAP, which is also listening on localhost 8080. So when we visit the page, it's going through ZAP, and that's causing the page to get intercepted by ZAP. But if you don't want to go searching through the history to find the page, like for example, if you had a whole lot of pages instead of just the few that we see here, then we could also capture the page with a breakpoint. So to set a breakpoint, click the breakpoint button so it turns red, go back and browse to the page that you want to visit. In this case, I'll just refresh. So here we see that the GET request has been sent off to the server, but you'll notice Firefox is just waiting for a response because the request has been intercepted and stopped in ZAP. At this point, you can go ahead and fuzz this request, or we'll just let it go on. And we notice that the request is the very last one we visited in history. So if I double click this request, it'll bring it back up into the request window. Now in this case, we didn't actually submit the request. So what we're seeing here is the GET request. We could fuzz the parameters that are available with a GET request, like the page parameter, which was up here in the URL. But say we want to fuzz the form itself. So let's go ahead and submit a request, like a post request. So we'll say admin and random password. And now we've submitted a request through the post. So if we go back over to ZAP, we'll see that this request includes some extra parameters, username and password. So let's fuzz the username field. So the first thing we're going to do is highlight the field. You don't have to do this, it just makes the next step easier. So for example, if I want to fuzz this, I can right click and say fuzz, and you'll notice that the field that I highlighted is already ready to go. Now let's just say that you had just right clicked any random place and hit fuzz. Just remove the default and go up and hit the field that you want to actually fuzz and highlight it. Click on add. This is where we're going to add the payload that we're going to inject into this position. You can add multiple payloads. So to add the first payload, click add. For strings, you can just enter in strings that you want to inject. So you might insert literally a string, or you might send in some symbols. But you can also add injections from payload files. So if you click on File Fuzzer, you can pick from Dirbuster and JBroFuzz by default. You can add your own as well. And so in this case, since we're talking about a page that's supposed to be SQL injectable, we can try the injection series with the SQL injections. So we'll pick a couple of these. And down here you can see the payload, what's probably going to get injected. So to keep this one simple, we'll just take the SQL injection 101. And so we have some strings we're going to inject, and we have some values from a file that we're going to inject. So it's a nice combination, at least for demo purposes. And we'll hit Start Fuzzer. Then the fuzzer works quickly, and we can see that we can sort on the response body, and we can also look at the payloads that were injected. And you can search on the fuzzing results as well. So over here in search, if we pick HTTP fuzz results, we can search for things like error, or if you know some other value that should pop up, then we can search for that as well. Now in the case of this site Matilde, there's actually a menu entry called A6 improper error, referring back to OWASP A6. So that's going to mess us up using the word error. So maybe we want to search for something more specific, like in your syntax, which is the error that comes back from MySQL Server a lot of times, or syntax. All right, and see here it says you have an error in your SQL syntax. It's a very common phrase coming back from MySQL. And that gets us down to a couple of pages. So if we double click on these lines, what it's going to do is bring the request and response up into the request response window up here. So this request, the username had a single tick mark, single quote, and that caused an error. So that's probably a good indication that a single quote is a value that's going to trigger the error in this page. We can go over here and just put the single quote in and see the error. And a quick look at the error shows us that it's vulnerable to SQL injection. So hopefully this quick tour of a couple of different ways to fuzz a field with ZAP gives you some ideas about how to test your websites to help make them more secure.